Good morning. How is everybody? I hope well. To preface, we're going to have a class today on something that we've talked about before, but I think it's good to go over again. Um, Mainly because it's something that's in the news right now. Maybe some of you have seen it. But in Texas, they're having a really difficult time. And, this class is probably going to be like 2 weeks out, so hopefully things will be better by the time this airs. But we should go over why things are happening the way it's happening in Texas. So there's a freeze going through there, and people have lost their power. People have lost their ability to get water. I mean, pipes are freezing, things like that, because they've never experienced this sort of weather before. And the weather is really affecting people's lives. And so it's important for us to understand that there is such a thing as global climate change, and what climate change is. The reason it's important is because a lot of the times people will talk about, say, like global warming, and that's kind of a pardon me. That's something that happens. Global warming is happening, but it's not the only thing. Now, global climate change is exactly what's happening in Texas right now. And what that is there's also global freezing in places where usually that weather doesn't happen. And that's what climate change is. It's our human impact, because there's a lot of humans that are on the earth now. And it's impacting the way our weather patterns are, basically happening. And there's global freezing, there's global warming, and it's happening at different spots. And obviously, like, the ice caps are melting and things like that, and that's because of human impact. So each of us, and the more people that there are on this earth, is going to affect the climate. I mean, we live in basically a terrarium, which I had one once. Basically, you can get it like a giant bowl and just put stuff in there, and then watch things grow. And the thing is the more things you introduce into that, the more it's going to affect the way the terrarium works. Like, if you add in a certain plant, that might usurp the rest of the plants. It's the same with, like, the gardening classes that I do. That when things are not native or invasive, then it's going to take over the entire thing. And that's what's happening with global climate change. So I looked up something. It's through NASA, so hopefully people still trust NASA. But it's about climate change and kind of what it is. So today's class is to kind of go over what climate change is, not just a seeming opinion from me, but also what the science is behind it, because it is scientific research. So let's get started. All right. And like I said, we have done this before or talked about it. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me, and I will do my best to research it and find out exactly what the best answer is, and scientific answer, because there needs to be data in order for things to be to be true and to be honest. So what is climate change? So the short answer is climate change describes a change in the average conditions, such as temperature and rainfall, in a region over a long period of time. NASA scientists have observed the Earth's surface is warming, and many of the warmest years on record have happened, in the past 20 years. So now they'll go over the difference between weather and climate. So, so they have a little diagram here. So, and it shows here what local weather patterns are like, but then this shows what global climate is like. So weather describes the conditions outside right now in a specific place. So just looking out the window, today's a rainy day, and so, you turn on the weather, it's going to say, well, today it's going to rain, or you can look on your phone and be like, it's going to rain. That, which is exactly what this says. So, but rain, snow, wind, hurricanes, tornadoes, and the like are all weather events. Now, climate, on the other hand, is more than just 1 or 2 rainy days. Climate describes the weather conditions that are expected in a region at a particular time of year. So is it usually rainy or usually dry? Is it typically hot or typically cold, depending on the place? A region's climate is determined by observing its weather over a period of many years. Generally, and like I said, this is scientific. They do data for 30 years or more. So they take data, and that's how they kind of come up with, what climate change is. So, for example, 1 or 2 weeks of rainy weather wouldn't change the fact that Phoenix typically has a dry desert climate. It's very hot there, I've been there. Even though it's rainy right now, we still expect Phoenix to be dry because that's usually the case. And so what is, from there, we go from the difference between weather and climate. Weather is a specific day and what's happening today. Climate is what's been happening over the last 30 years and scientists taking data from that. So then what is climate change? Why is what's happening in Texas happening right now? And it's not just Texas. There's some other places that are being affected as well. Oh, my bad. Watch my elbows. So, and you can see a lot of the stuff back here too. So what is climate change? Climate change describes a change in the average conditions, so such as temperature and rainfall, in a region over a long period of time. For example, 20,000 years ago, much of the United States was covered in glaciers. In the United States today, we have a warmer climate and fewer glaciers, as we kind of talked about before. Global climate change refers to the average long-term changes over the entire Earth. These include warming temperatures and changes in precipitation, as well as the effects of the Earth's warming, such as rising sea levels, which will happen because of the melting of the glaciers. Then the sea level is going to rise because of the melt, then sea levels will rise. Shrinking mountain glaciers, which does affect the rising sea levels, like I said. Ice melting at a faster rate than usual in Greenland, Antarctica, and the Arctic. Changes in flower and plant blooming times. So things that usually don't bloom at certain times are now. Like we're having earlier springs in some places, and sometimes later springs in other places, because everything is changing over this period of time because of the change to the climate, the change in the warming, the change in the freezing. It's going to affect the way plants react, and then you're going to have pollen at different times and things like that. Earth's climate has constantly been changing, even long before humans came into the picture. However, scientists have observed unusual changes recently. For example, Earth's average temperature has been increasing much more quickly than they would expect over the past 150 years. So how much is the Earth's climate changing right now or currently? Let's see. It looks like a lot. So there you go. You look at this graph here, and this is according to NASA, how it's been rising, and that's annual global temperature change. So this is 1880, so a while ago, to the 1940s, to where we are currently in the 2000s. And it's been increasingly, and look, you've had lows, spikes, lows, and now we've had a huge spike again. So some parts of Earth are warming faster than others, but on average, global air temperatures near the Earth's surface have gone up 2 degrees Fahrenheit in the past 100 years. In fact, the past 5 years have been the warmest 5 years in centuries. That's not a good statistic for us. Many people, including scientists, are concerned about this warming. As Earth's climate continues to warm, the intensity and amount of rainfall during storms such as hurricanes is expected to increase, and we've seen that in different places around the world with giant hurricanes that are coming about and really decimating places. But it's because of human impact. But then we're also having droughts, and heat waves are also expected to become more intense as climate warms. So there is global warming, and global climate warms, and we will have droughts where we don't get rain. Luckily today we're getting rain. This is fantastic. This is what we want. We might not want to drive around in it, walk in it, but it's very important for the Earth. When the whole Earth's temperature changes by 1 or 2 degrees, that change can have big impacts on the health of Earth's plants and animals too. One thing is that I know that certain animals, such as deer, are having a hard time finding food, and it's not because of global warming per se. It's because that a lot of things have been frozen over the ground, like the permafrost on the ground has been frozen, and then it's hard for deers because they're herbivores. I mean, they don't eat other animals, so they eat plants. But when the ground is covered in ice, they can't really get to the plants that they typically eat. So it becomes, dangerous for them. And we don't want that. I like deers. They're wonderful. So what causes climate change? Which is basically the last thing. So I'll just keep this. So we're going to go over what the greenhouse effect is. And again, if you think of the world like a giant terrarium, I can send you the spelling of that if you'd like, but you can make your own terrarium. But so what causes climate change? And what is the greenhouse effect? There are lots of factors that contribute to Earth's climate. However, scientists agree that Earth has been getting warmer in the past 50 to 100 years due to human activity. Certain gases in Earth's atmosphere block heat from escaping. So that means that, like it shows here, the heat cannot escape where it usually would escape. So I'm just going to drop everything real fast. And so that's going to keep it here, and then that's why ice caps are melting and things like that. So this is called the greenhouse effect. That's the greenhouse effect. Is that I don't know if any of you have been in a greenhouse. If you want to, next time we go to Annie's Annuals, we'll go back into the greenhouse, and you'll notice how much warmer it is in there. And certain plants really enjoy warmth. But a greenhouse is something that's human created, and you walk in there like you'll be with the outside plants and be like, oh, it's nice and cool out here, and then you go into the greenhouse and you're like, well, now it's really warm. But that's the greenhouse effect, basically. That you walk into something and all the heat is trapped in there, and that is, and it, like I said, it's good for some plants, but for the earth, it's not good that it continues to happen. So these gases with the greenhouse effect, these gases keep Earth warm, like the glass in a greenhouse keeps plants warm, like the greenhouse we have at George Miller that we helped build. So human activities such as burning fuel to power factories, cars, and buses are changing the natural greenhouse, and it's becoming more unnatural because we're creating it. These changes cause the atmosphere to trap more heat than it used to, leading to a warmer Earth. And now the last question is, does what we do matter as humans? Yes. There's the short and long of it. But when human activities create greenhouse gases, Earth warms. This matters because oceans, land, air, plants, animals, and energy from the sun all have an effect on one another. The combined effects of all of these, because we live in a global world, give us our global climate. In other words, Earth climate functions like one big connected system. Thinking about things as systems means looking for how every part relates to others. NASA's Earth's observing satellites collect information about how our planet's atmosphere, water, and land are changing. And again, it's over a long period of time. By looking at this information, scientists can observe how Earth systems work together. This will help us understand how small changes in one place contribute to bigger changes in Earth's global climate. Now, there's lots of things we can do to help with this. We can recycle, but really we should reduce what we have, reuse, like bottles and anything that we can, instead of having one water bottle instead of buying one every day. Then we can really help the Earth's climate that way. There's many things that we can do to help the Earth, and just reducing our human impact is very important. But I will have a quiz for the second part of the class. It won't be your global footprint, but I'll have a different one for you. But it's nothing to be scared about, but at the same time, I think it's also good to be prepared. And the more you know, the better. And what's happening in Texas currently is something that could happen anywhere else. And so it's good to be prepared, have water on hand, have clean water on hand, have food on hand. And also, a lot of people are without heat and it's freezing. So it's good to be able to have certain amenities, blankets, and all sorts in order to make sure that people can get through any situation safely. And we also need to be able to help our neighbors out as much as possible. So let's help the Earth. Let's end on a good note. Let's help the Earth as much as we can. And I miss you all. And I hope that I see you very soon, and we can get back to helping the Earth by doing our recycling and doing our, what we do. And we all do an amazing job. I'm very happy with our program and all the people that contribute to it. So I'll see you all later, and have a wonderful rest of your day.